I also wonder with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I've met him on a couple of occasions, and he's such a wonderful, warm. He mostly strikes me as just a really emotionally healthy human being.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. And I wonder sometimes his mother sounds like a quite extraordinary.
Yeah, well, his whole family are quite, but his mother was also a very strong Tibetan lady.
Right.
You know, and she was no wimp. His father was a bit iffy, but his mother was great. And she was very strong, I think, role model for him, really. He admired his mother tremendously, and she did a lot. I mean, she died too soon, really. But his sister then took on Jetsunma. And they're showing, you know, Tibetan, you know, I mean, she was there in this extremely rigid hierarchy and patriarchy, nothing more than in the court of the Dalai Lama. I mean, he wasn't allowed to touch a woman, any woman.
Even his mother?
Well, he was probably allowed to touch his mother just to say hi. You know.
Right.
But basically, he wasn't allowed anywhere, you know, women kept at a big distance. And the fact that despite all that, he ended up being such a warm, loving, huggy sort of person. It's quite extrauraordinary because he wasn't brought up in that kind of atmosphere at all.
Yeah, when my sister and I went into his room and he was holding my sister's hand, and she was having some troubles at the time, and it was like he kind of sensed it, you know, and he was extremely warm.
No, he's very warm and loving and totally non-judgmental. When he looks at anybody, he sees their inner being, their inner potential, and he's not judging them. And people feel that, you know, even if just for a second he looks at you, they feel this total acceptance and love with it, no matter who you are, what you are. And so a lot of people just melt, and some people get really, really, especially politicians and sort of hierarchical churchmen, they feel very challenged because he's not looking at the mask.
Right.
He's looking at the person. The persona is a mask, right? And so he's not looking at the persona. He's looking right into the heart of the being with love and without any judgment. And so for a lot of people, that's very, very powerful, even if he just looks at them for a moment in passing, that they're totally accepted who they are.
Well, I think judgment is almost our second nature, isn't it? It's very rare to...
And we judge ourselves, you see, and then we suffer also.
Yeah. Because I was mentioning to you before how Jack Cornfield has said that for Westerners coming to Buddhism that we need to almost do like 5 years of psychotherapy beforehand because we bring such judgmental baggage with us. And I know that, you know, certainly when I first sat down to meditate, I turned it into a Catholic examination of conscience, which is not a pretty thing. And it took me a very long time to as Pema Chodron talks about, put my mind in the cradle of loving kindness. I just couldn't do it, and I would judge the way I was meditating, or judge everything, like my breathing's wrong, the whole everything. And so a lot of the Western sort of approach now with a lot of the lay people who are teaching mindfulness focuses a great deal, I think, on non-judgment, being kind to yourself, you know, and that...
It's the hardest thing for many people. I mean, the Dalai Lama's main translator, Geshe Tupten Jinpa, he started this course in America on what are called the 4 illimitables, which is loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and kind of impartiality or equanimity. And traditionally, you start by giving loving kindness and compassion, etc., to yourself, then to someone you love, someone you're neutral about, and then somebody you don't like, and then spread it around the world, right? So first you start with yourself, right? May I be well and happy. May I be peace and at my ease. May I be free from suffering. So you give love to yourself. And he said, they couldn't do it. He said he was just so surprised that all these Americans who look so confident and, you know, we're going to tell the world how it should be run, they couldn't do it. They
Yeah.
could not love themselves. And so he had to teach them first to think of somebody or something, you know, their dog or a person or whoever, that they did love, feel that warmth of wishing them to be happy, and then to take it and try to give it back to themselves. So this is a big problem, because so many people indeed are not friends with themselves.
Yes.
You know, they're very critical. They put themselves down. They say things to themselves that we would never say to anybody else. If we said it to anybody else, we wouldn't have friends.
Yeah. Is that why the silence is so unbearable for us? Because it's actually full of those voices?
Because, you know, and also in silence, when you have no television, you have no phones, you have no gadgets, you only have your own mind, then the mind will click in to its own entertainment, right?
Yeah.
And this is why people have a hard time quietening down, because then the mind has no external anything to clutch on, so it will come up with its own soap operas, right? Especially poor me and all my suffering and blah, 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 blah.
Which, if you can get a distance on it, then you can see the stories you're telling yourself.
So this is why you're supposed to look at it.
Yeah.
Right? And just see, my God, not that one again. we did that, this morning. Why is it coming back? You know, I mean, the mind is also very repetitive. And if you start watching it, the main problem is how boring it is.
Look, you're talking to someone who's seen Wonder Woman about 20 times. I'm a recidivist. I just I can see the same story over and over, and I see problems.
And the more sad it is, the more you're going to play it. You know, poor me syndrome.
Are there particular types of stories that do have a stronger pull?
People like ones which make you feel bad,
right?
That make you feel sorry for yourself, that make you feel the victim of life circumstances. And, I mean, I often say that the ego, which is the one playing this whole thing, is very happy to be miserable.
Why is that?
Because you're only thinking about me. And my suffering and all that I've gone through and all my troubles, and I'm the only one who's ever suffered. So therefore, it's very important when these kind of thoughts come up to recognize this unites you with the whole world. Because everybody has problems. Everybody has suffered. Everybody's lost loved ones. Why is it me, me, me?
I think some of that can also be achieved through friendship. Like with very dear friends, when you can have a sense of humour and it can give you a perspective on your own troubles that takes you out of what Joan Chittister calls the smallness of your own life.
Well, the Buddha said that good friends was essential on the spiritual path.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his main assistant, Ananda, said to him, I've been thinking about it, Buddha, and I think that good companionship is half the spiritual path. And the Buddha said, no, Ananda, it's the whole of the spiritual path. So, yes, good companionship.
All right. Good
companionship.
And that there were a couple of things I wanted to just come back to, which was one of that is the Sangha, which is about would that encompass that whole thing of companionship?
Yeah, is that the first thing the Buddha did after his enlightenment, sitting around trees for 7 weeks. He got up and he formed a community.
So is that what's propelled you towards, because you're wanting to establish nunneries now so that women, because as you were saying to me earlier that it's very difficult for Western nuns, that they're not taken seriously, they don't have the support, there's a certain scepticism, and are they lacking that sort of companionship and community and infrastructure?
Well, so many of them are, which is the reason why so many of them in the end give up. Because for example, all right, you're a girl from, say, Ladakh or Bhutan or Spiti or somewhere. You go to the Lama, you say, I want to be a nun. He says, oh, very good, very meritorious. Okay, come back, I'll give you ordination. So you go back, you get ordained. And then he sends you to his nunnery, right? So right from the start, you are being trained, you are part of a group, You know what your role is. You start from the bottom and you work your way up and you learn all the things needed. And nowadays especially, because nuns are studying philosophy, they're debating, they're going into long-term retreats, they're doing everything. So you're part of a whole group who are focused on learning and realizing the spiritual life. And so, you belong. But for people who do not belong to the Himalayas, I mean, not only Westerners, but also other Asians who ordain into the Tibetan tradition, they have nowhere to go. Mm. I mean, there is, Chenrezig is the biggest community of nuns, and that's in Australia. But on the whole, unless you belong to that organization, then you wouldn't go there. And even there, you're not supported. You have to support yourself. And the lamas were ordained, but they don't take care after that. This is really, I think, where they've lost it. Because so many of the women, of course they're not little girls, which is very easy to mold them. They're like soft clay, and when they're very young, you can mold them into the shape you want. And most of the women or the men who come to get ordained nowadays are already, made into vessels, right? They're already standard. And so it's more difficult to remold. But they have, because they're in that shape because of their education, their profession, their life experiences. They've had so much already, which has propelled them to wanting to become a nun or a monk. I mean, that's why, because they have made a considered decision. It's not because the family put you there, because that's the tradition.
Yeah.
And so they have all that life experience and that genuine renunciation, because they often gave up very prosperous, lifestyles and houses they've sold, and they've given up everything, plus their family, their friends, many of them. And yet there's no support. Nobody cares. The Tibetans don't care. And you don't care. If a Tibetan Lama comes, it's all Rinpoche, 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 and even the most ignorant monk is treated like he's some precious jewel. And yet you can have women who have highly educated and highly accomplished, and yet they're overlooked. And they're set to work to run Dharma centers, but without any remuneration. And often they themselves have to pay the bills.
It's almost like a strange...
And they're disassociated from each other often. So they are the wrong kind of isolated.
Yeah. Because it's almost like a strange species of racism and exoticizing Tibetan lamas, isn't it? Where it's not actually about the teachings of practice or anything else. It's about the fact that they're from Tibet.
Well, one of the interesting things, because you mentioned Pema Chodron, I mean, she's one of the most best-selling authors in Tibetan scene. Thubten Chodron, Lekshe, Jampa Sedran, I mean, so many of them, the top scholars and writers and teachers are Western nuns. But it's still considered to be less valid
not the real
than
deal.
if some big lama comes and sits up on a throne,
Or, as you were saying, a kitchen...
Oh, a kitchen monk. I mean, he can put a hat on and then voila, he's Rinpoche.
That's very, very superficial, isn't it?
Yeah, but it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, even, it's a big problem, actually, because you can just, put on a fancy hat and give yourself a fancy title. Nobody knows.
Right.
And it's become a big, big problem. It's not so much in the West, but in, like, Taiwan and Hong Kong and places like this, many scams because of that. Because nobody knows. If you can chant a bit, and you tell everybody you're enlightened, they actually believe you.
seeing a way forward. A future career. I've been single for a while. It wouldn't make much diff in that way.